What's going on, guys? So this week we've got a fun list video planned out, and that is 3 mistakes that every kiter makes. And with board sports, it's kind of funny, but the details, they really do matter. And there's just small little tweaks that you can make on the water or habits that you might have picked up that are kind of holding you back in the long run. So if you can become aware of these things, address them, and work on them in a pretty short amount of time, you can massively improve your riding. So yeah, I'm kind of stoked on this one. Let's get to it. So the first mistake that I want to cover is probably the most common, and I've noticed a lot of riders like to ride overpowered. And when you're learning, it kind of feels good to go out like on maybe a bigger kite than you should be, because all of a sudden jumping might seem easier, you're able to get airborne, you're able to do different things, start working on rotations with like minimal skill. But the problem is, in spite of the fact that modern kites are super safe now, like we've got big wind ranges on pretty much on all the all-around kites, but what happens is you're shortchanging yourself. So if you go out and you're always kind of lit, you're not going to develop the finer skills needed to actually improve your riding in general. So you're not going to learn how to actually load and pop, or how to use board speed to create energy and then put that tension into your lines to slingshot you into the air, whether you're doing a scent jump or if you're somebody who's working on kite low power tricks. This is an absolute must. So the secret is to go out and ride when you're appropriately powered, or even maybe a little underpowered, and it might be frustrating at first, but what'll happen is you'll become so much more efficient with your edging. And I actually did like a 10 to 15 minute video on controlling the kite with the edge of your board, so I won't go into all the details in this video. You can check that out. I'll link that in the blog in the eye icon in the upper corner of the screen here. So what this comes down to is, when you're on the beach, just sheath the bar in, and you know you're appropriately powered when the kite pulls you just onto the balls of your feet, maybe your toes. If you're getting picked up off the beach, you are way overpowered. Your kite's gonna do all the work for you, and your session's not gonna be all that productive when it comes to actually learning like the board skills required. So just some basic fundamental ideas to think about when it comes to developing your board skills when you're properly powered is learning to use board speed, come off your edge, and get the appropriate approach. So like I've been kind of hammering this point, but everybody wants to go across to the wind, jump, and then land going across to the wind. And you really got to go downwind to build board speed, quickly load back upwind, and then go straight downwind for your landing. So once you can kind of get this locked into your mind, work on things like your body posture, not like releasing at your hips. Just pay attention to like little details on where you might be releasing energy with your body. So like if you can keep a really stiff posture and lean back, keep your ankles locked, your toes pointed to the sky, and then use that buildup of speed and releasing that energy through your core and through the board with an appropriately powered kite, you're going to progress so much faster, you're going to jump so much higher, and then later on when you do happen to go out and you're lit, you're going to have the skills and the knowledge to do a whole lot more and get a lot more air with it. So that's tip number 1, is ride appropriately powered. So for tip number 2, another huge mistake that I see a lot of kiters make is not redirecting their kite after a jump. And what I mean is, a lot of times people will keep the kite directly above them because it has that parachute effect and they want to come down and have a nice soft landing. The problem is, when you do this, it's usually not that soft of a landing. If you find that you're riding and you're falling on your butt all the time, it's because your kite is too high. So after you set a jump, it doesn't really matter when, you just want to pull on your front hand and send that kite forward. So what this will do is, rather than you just going up and coming back down on your butt, you're going to get pulled forward like an actual board sport. And then you need to land downwind, kind of back to the other skill set that I was talking about the proper loading, the proper pop, and the proper landing. So when you dive the kite forward, it's going to pull you forward and downwind, and what'll happen is you're going to create more board speed for the landing, and that board speed is what's going to create a plane on the water for you to ride, and you won't even need that much kite power. And you don't have to be super aggressive with it. You don't have to dive the kite to the water and take all that parachute effect out. You can keep it like around even a 45-degree angle and still have some of that loftiness, or maybe do like a small heli loop or something like that. But the most important thing to add more style to your riding, to actually land tricks, is to redirect the kite forward. And if you don't do that, honestly, you're probably not going to land too many tricks, and even if you do land something, it's not really going to look all that good or feel all that good. So if you're that rider who's always falling on your butt, get in your head to just pull on your front hand and redirect the kite forward. And this actually applies to jump transitions as well. One of the most common questions people ask is, hey, how do I do a jump transition? Well, you send a jump and then you redirect the kite the other way. So it's really about creating that force, like doing a power stroke when you're in the air. And that's all this actually is just doing basically another power stroke to pull you forward. So super easy tip, one that a lot of people miss. So if you're that rider who's falling on your butt, give this a go. Pull on that front hand, redirect the kite. All right, guys, so the third mistake that I see a lot of riders make is for sure the most common mistake out there, and that's not learning how to loop your kite early. And I'm not talking about mega loops or super intense kite loops, just looping the kite in general, whether it's doing like a transition where you do a down loop, or when you're in light winds, just working on loops when you do little jumps and things like that. And I've noticed that a lot of kiters are kind of afraid to loop their kite, and I'm surprised to meet people who have been riding for even like 5 or 6 years who just will not loop their kite. They think it's super dangerous, they're really intimidated by it, and looping is one of the most fun aspects of kiteboarding. I would actually say it's the one element of our sport that really separates us from a lot of other board sports, and I'm kind of a huge supporter of the whole board sport movement in kiteboarding. I do believe that kiteboarding should be treated kind of more like a board sport. I love that side of things, but the one side of our sport that really separates it from everything else is our ability to send it and loop the kite. So you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't start incorporating kite loops. And my advice to you is just do it on the water. Ride downwind and start doing little front loops, little back loops, and kind of refer back to the first tip in this video about not riding overpowered, because if you're overpowered, you're never going to be able to loop that kite. Now, if you're perfectly powered or even a little underpowered, you can start looping all the time. And something that I noticed in my riding when I was learning is I used to do this as well. I would overcompensate and go out overpowered. And when I did finally get some good advice from some friends who really helped me figure out how to improve my riding, I started going out on smaller kites, working on using board speed, and I would have sessions where I would be kind of like frustrated or bored because things weren't really like all that intense or that exciting. And I started looping the kite with every transition, with every jump, just pulling on the front hand a bit more. So like with step 2, with redirecting that kite forward, you can take that one step further and do like a front roll and then redirect the kite, but just keep pulling, and you can land like normal with a regular redirect and then let the kite just loop through and pull you into a transition. So all of a sudden you're just taking it one step further and making something super basic look a little more technical, and it feels really good. And I would argue that when you're hooked in, looping is the most fun part of kiteboarding. So do yourself a favor and start doing it early. Even after your first transition, just pull the trigger while you're riding on the water. I'm not talking about jumping or sending a big back loop. Just do little down loops for your transitions when you're riding just a little bit underpowered. Let the kite come through. It'll kind of do like a reverse power stroke. It'll pull you the other way, and you'll start developing the muscle memory and getting over that fear really early on, so that when you're like a second-year rider or third-year rider, you can start doing more advanced loops. You can start taking your riding to that next level earlier and save yourself a few years of that whole, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to loop, I'm kind of scared. You can really save yourself a lot of time just by doing things small, taking baby steps, and getting to it early. Because with sports, it always comes down to muscle memory and time on the water. So the more times that you throw a loop, the better you're going to be at it. The more times that you send a jump and redirect your kite and work on these finer skills, the more you're going to cement these things. So work on reinforcing good habits on the water and not bad habits, and try to avoid that fear-based progression where you don't want to try things because you're overpowered and you're kind of compensating. Take it back to the basics, work on your fundamentals, work on riding not lit, but in perfectly powered conditions or even underpowered conditions, and you're going to progress a lot faster. So that's it for this week. I hope that this is going to be a helpful video. Hopefully it'll get a lot of you thinking a little bit differently about your riding. If you got any questions, drop a comment. If you guys found the video helpful, please help me out by hitting the subscribe button, and I'll catch you next time.